The next thing is spotting safety hazards. I'm wondering, how do we do that, Sally?
Yeah, so what can we do? What can your employees do tomorrow? I like to make things practical for people. What can we do tomorrow to minimize the risk on playgrounds? There are some common situations that arise on playgrounds that can be spotted during regular inspections, and that's why preventive maintenance is so important. They include hazards like entanglement, head and neck entrapment, impacts as a result from falling onto surfacing, and lastly, protrusions. Nearly 80% of playground hazards are due to falls during impact, so falls to the surfacing below. So if you're really looking at reducing injuries, take care of your surfacing. Please, please, please take care of your surfacing. And you can look at look to the CPSC standards or the ASTM standards for those guidelines. I want to cover each of these items a little bit and kind of make them real life for you. I have some images here that can kind of show you what a hazard looks like on the playground. Entanglement, the first item here is it's the leading cause of death or serious injury on playgrounds. It most often involves a child's clothing, such as a hood or a hood string or maybe a cape around the neck, leading to strangulation. Things like this washer up in the right-hand corner of the slide right now, that's too large. It's too large and it can cause an entanglement. Or the gap on this slide, the picture on this slide, that can easily have a piece of clothing get stuck in it. Or maybe bolts that stick out too far past the thread, or the threads of the bolts stick out beyond the nut. These items can cause a serious hazard related to entanglement. Gaps, head and neck entrapments. Gaps that are considered head entrapments on rigid equipment measure more than 3.5 inches and less than 9 inches. So if I go on the slide here, I'm talking about this, the yellow arrows between the piece of wood and the plate equipment. You do not want those gaps in your equipment to be between the range of 3.5 and 9 inches. That can cause head entrapment and cause serious injury. And when maintaining and repairing, make sure that you avoid creating any of those head entrapments. And actually on this slide as well, there's a yellow tool up in the right-hand corner that is actually something that is used to measure for head and neck entrapments. And for instance, a CPSI inspector could use that tool to do that. Back to this list, impact. Impact as a result from falling to surfacing. So if someone falls to the surfacing below from the play equipment, it can be caused by many different things. A collapse of the equipment or loose or moving equipment that's too loose. As part of the inspection process, it's important to push and pull and use that playground equipment to check for that looseness. And also check your footers, and are they still in good shape? Are they sturdy? You want your surfacing, not the child's body, to absorb the impact of a child falling onto it. So that's really why it's called safety surfacing. Lastly, I want to cover protrusions. A protrusion is something, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's something that sticks out and can cause bodily injury to a user because it can either jab the skin or poke in an eye socket or stab an internal organ. For instance, on this slide here, the yellow arrow is pointing to a bolt that is sticking far past the requirement of the only 2 threads past the nut. So that bolt needs to be cut. And again, I just want to make sure that folks understand that when you're repairing or replacing equipment, on your playground. You do not want to create any of these hazards as you're doing that. That's an important part of this process, this maintenance process. And you can obviously see here in this slide that this equipment, there was a play equipment panel that was replaced, and that bolt was put on there, and it just wasn't cut. And it's as simple as that, cutting that down to the point to where there's only 2 threads on the end of that bolt. There are a lot of things that your employees can start doing tomorrow to keep an eye out on potential hazards. And by educating them, by educating those frontline staff and equipping them with this knowledge, you can increase inspection time and make your playground safer, actually pretty easily. So if your staff is out there mowing grass or picking up trash on the playground, train them to look for broken glass in that safety surfacing. Look for protruding bolts or metal, something that's going to harm a child. Keep an eye out for worn swing chains. Any little action to reduce hazards, make playgrounds safer, and you're likely to decrease your liability for your association by doing so.